After Whitby, the snow carried on. Not loudly, not with any great announcement. It simply moved along the coast, finding the villages one by one. Getting to them was not difficult in the dramatic sense. No chaos, nothing out of control. There were flashing lights in places, the quiet kind. Vehicles stopped more as a precaution than a crisis. Just roads that slowly became less certain. Snow drifting back across the tarmac almost as quickly as it was cleared. Tyre tracks filling in again behind you. That quiet moment where you start doing the maths in your head and wondering not how you get in, but how you get back out. Some places were easier than others. Ravenscar was perhaps the worst to reach. Not because it felt dangerous, but because it felt unfinished. Drifts forming where the wind decided they should stay. The road narrowing, then softening, then slowly disappearing again. And always that small voice in your head asking a very sensible question. If you get in, will you get out again? There was some reassurance. Tractors were working the drifts. Big machines. Steady progress. Quiet competence. Yorkshire farmers doing what they do best. Keeping things moving without making a fuss about it. The snow tyres helped. More than Glenn expected, if he is honest. Nothing exotic, nothing over the top. They were picked up earlier in the winter from Harrison Garage in Whitby. Very reasonably priced. Sensibly recommended. The sort of place that tells you what you actually need, rather than what looks impressive. And this winter, they have quietly done exactly what they were meant to do. Help Glenn get about, get in, and just as importantly, get back out again. Robin Hood's Bay was difficult too. Snow had drifted into corners and pockets, collecting where the village naturally traps weather. The sort of place where once it settles, it tends to stay. Glenn stopped briefly at the local shop, partly to check supplies, mostly because Riley was hungry. A couple of Glenn's friends had already been stranded there for 2 days. Not dramatic, just waiting it out as people do. Around Robin Hood's Bay, the snow had started to behave differently. Not just falling, but gathering. Drifts formed around St. Stephen's Church, piling up where the wind decided they should stay. Paths softened, edges blurred. Some people would say this was not significant snow. There are always people like that. People who enjoy typing more than looking. This was not for them. This was for anyone who enjoys seeing places briefly transformed. And for those who understand that significance is not always measured in inches. Riley is 9 now. And in his lifetime he has not really seen snow like this. Not drifting snow. Not snow that reshapes the ground. So Glenn let him have a quick play. Nothing reckless. Nothing far from the car. Just enough to step into a drift. To feel how it resists. To understand what drifting snow actually is. Nearby, a farmer was feeding his sheep. The road filling in almost as fast as it could be cleared. The car was parked close. The heater left running. Warmth waiting. Because this was not about pushing on. It was about seeing something properly, then stepping back. Sandsend was difficult to film. By this point, the camera had taken a bit of a hammering. The snow was wet, so were Glenn's lenses. They misted up quickly, then the viewfinder followed. Riley did his best to help, trying to keep the gear dry between shots, but it was not easy. Some days the weather simply decides how much you are allowed to film. A wander through the village and valley showed the cottages off. In a way rarely seen, thick snow, soft edges, properly seasonal, fitting for early January. Nearby a car had run into a few problems. The owner was not especially pleased to see a camera and made that clear. That was understandable under the circumstances. Hopefully the car was recovered without too much trouble and everyone made it home safe and warm. The pub looked inviting, very inviting, but there were still scenes to capture, light to catch, moments that do not come around very often. In fact, Glenn said the last time he saw Sandsend like this was back in 2013, 12 years ago, which felt like reason enough to keep going. Ravenscar was difficult to get to. The local farmer told Glenn the bottom road to Scarborough was blocked, but he also assured Glenn if he got stuck, he would come and get him out. This is why Glenn loves farmers, or most of them, always helpful and mostly friendly. The village was scenic. The view to Robin Hood's Bay, special as always. A few heart-in-mouth moments on the way out. But Glenn made it alive and well. Next up in the trilogy of January's note is part 3. North York Moors Villages, where Glenn visits Harwood Dale, Broxer, Aisleby, Russwarp and Lealholm. The latter two having beautiful scenes as the river froze and snow fell.